my name is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. They share their stories and explain how they're in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. In this week's Her Conversations, I'm speaking to an artist, healer, author, grandmother, coach, teacher, the creator of LoveElixir and the founder of the Ma platform. My guest on this week's Her Conversations is Kathe Izzo, who's all of the above. I'm inspired by Kathe's ability to move powerfully through the world, guided by love and skillfully being the multifaceted woman that life requires her to be, without forfeiting her charisma or femininity. During our conversation, Kathe talks about knowing when one chapter of life needs to make way for the next, the vision she has for the Ma project, and also we talk briefly about the current conversation on race between women within the spirituality community. But as always, I begin each episode by asking, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most her?
I feel it the most when I am, in stillness, but it's a stillness that can be a moving stillness. It's when I'm open and when I have the ability to really create that space for myself on a continual basis. So whether that's a morning practice or connection to nature, intimacy, and, so it's that open state. And I think that's all I can say. I feel like that's going to be the running theme of the whole interview.
That's fine. And you do so much now and you've done so many things. Is there a way that you can kind of tell your story up until this point and can find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. So I will start by saying I'm 60 years old, and it's kind of hard for me to believe that. I've had many, many lives and incarnations. And I have 3 grown daughters, 27, 30, and 33, and they're all amazing. I'm sure I'll refer to them again. And I was a single mom most of the time, so it was really, we were all together, and they're all powerful women in their own right now, which is amazing. And so I think on top of the top of the list of who I think I am is a poet and artist. And I put that together because I work from a very poetic landscape, whether it's in my more healing work, whether it's in my performance work or my private spiritual space. I feel like I have a poet's landscape. And, I did a lot of different things in the art world. I'm from New York and filmmaker. I went to film school, but really where I found my niche and where the beginning of this story is in a kind of experimental form of performance art, which is in the public realm. So some people call it participatory art or social engagement. So you're engaging with the public, usually outside of the gallery. And I really love to push that boundary. And I think that drives everything. I love intimacy. I love to really touch people. And so I was doing work like that, different formats. And I started this project in 2001 called the True Love Project. And I thought that was it. Like I was invited into a show where you had to do something that was free, happened outside of the gallery, and was something that you did all the time, but you were putting a frame around as art. Mm-hmm. And while I was contemplating that show, somebody said to me, I was doing an oral history project, and this man that I was interviewing in the town I lived in said, "Oh yeah, intimacy is your medium. That's like clear," or something like that. He was like a fisherman, it was just like such a profound statement. I was like, wow, is that true? And so then I just told the curator, I'm going to have people fall in love with me for the day. And they can sign up in the gallery and I don't have to meet them. All I need is their name. So it was like this almost like faith healing, like I'm Italian, like light a candle for somebody kind of thing. Mm. And I did that for a month, and it was so profound. So that was in 2001. It was the year of 9/11, and my mom died that year. So like a really powerful transitional year. And after that show, I was like, I just want to explore this more. And so, could talk about it more, and you can ask me questions, but it went from being just not knowing people to having email contact with people to phone calls, and quickly turned into actually meeting people, which might seem kind of strangers. And, there are various ways I reached out to people, and might seem scary to people, but, I was really guided. And there were some people I said no to that seemed weird, but most people, this thing happened, and is called the True Love Project. And what people think is love, what people need. Like from the minute people reached out to me to kind of commission the artwork, it was the whole process, this dialogue. And it was just so fascinating on an intellectual and emotional level and spiritual level, and was also something deep was happening inside of me. So, I did that for 10 years in various forms. I made different things. So everywhere from in the art world to people's private homes. And so that went to like maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and I got more involved in my spiritual practices. But that work was becoming more and more spiritual, just kind of this natural evolution. I got sick of the art world and representing myself in the art world. And at that time, that was when Kundalini, and also I do work with various plant medicines and the natural world. Those two things started evolving at the same rate, and they just seemed like I was just immersed. It was just, I just kind of go where my passion goes. And so I'm at a point right now where I'm finishing a book about the True Love Project, and I'm also working on a project that is in all those realms that I've spoken about, but it's a bigger project, and I am using my art world connections. And that I was called the Love Artist by the media. I never called myself that, but it's stuck, and that's the Instagram handle. And I feel like it's this new project, even though it's very spiritual, is really coming from that love artist place, just unexpectedly. So I'm kind of excited about that, and that I'm finishing the book, and it's just like one of those times that are very synchronous. So you're like in the right place. So I think I'll stop there, but
sure.
It's a flow, definitely. And it is that higher energetic resonance, right? When you have those things that everything fits together. I really feel like I'm having one of those moments right now.
Perfect. And like you say, your Instagram handle is the Love Artist. And when I think about you, that's kind of what I think of, even though I don't know I haven't up until this point really sat down and heard you tell your story and all the details of what you've been through to get to this point. One thing that I wanted to ask you with regards to when you did the True Love Project, was there something that, what most surprised you about love when you were going through that process? What preconceived ideas did you go in with, and what did you think, oh my God, I never knew that love was this?
Yeah. Well, it's like a really great question, because when I went into the project, I really, I was like, had this thing that some of us have, like, where you just have these really super intense conversations with somebody, a stranger on a train or a plane or somewhere. And it's like this moment, and it's like so intimate. And also had a bit of like people, I'm a Libra and I'm a charismatic person, people like kind of falling in love with me, even if it was only for a moment, like people saying that to me. And so when I first started the project, I think I'd been performing for a while, and it was genuine, but I think I also had a little bit of like the PR thing in me, like, oh, this will be really hot. Like people, and it was true. People loved it, and I got a lot of press about it. So when I started it, it was a bit kind of like an ego, or just like this seductive. Like I thought it was about being seductive. And I don't think I ever felt out of my integrity, but it was definitely on that end. And playing with that, in the past, and how I represented myself. But it got so spiritual and so intense so fast that, all of a sudden I was like holding these stories. Oh, I get like tears just thinking about it. Like I would, so I had a practice that I would employ. Like I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning, and then it became a meditation, right? So that I would be like, especially, I was meeting people in person. So I would look at their irises and like their eyebrows and their eyelashes, just like the way a mother would like look at a baby and count their finger, just to stay present. Because it was not that they were hiring me to love them like you would hire like a sex worker, which I did get a lot of that kind of questioning. It was more that I said I would fall in love with them. So I would say in the literature, like that would be on my own terms, because if I'm falling in love with you, then I'm a free agent to love you how best I can. And so sometimes, people were difficult, or, some story, it's all in the book, like there's some stories, but I would just be like, just love them. And I didn't really know what I was practicing, like I learned from doing it. And so it got to be a spiritual practice, and that was really surprising. And, so my evolution out of the project, like I could have kept working it. Like I was getting attention. And sometimes I look at my resume and see where all those like articles and those hot shows stop, but I just evolved right out of it, which was also surprising, because at the time I was like, this is gonna, you're an artist in the international art world, you're trying to get your place. So that was surprising also, that it just had its own power.
Wow, so beautiful. And then so you moved out of that, and what was the next step when you were coming out of that? Because you're saying you were surprised that it ended. It felt like it could have been an eternal thing. And I suppose in any artist's life or creative life, there comes a point where it feels like it's going to be forever and it's going to be immortal. But no artist has that length of time. They have their moment. They might be able to extend it, but you only really hit it for a moment in time, and then you have to kind of make way for someone else, and you have to evolve.
What happened for me, I mean, first of all, was very practical, because I really have always done what I wanted to do in some form, which is very difficult being a single mother. I have no family support, and I mean, my ex-husband was great, but it was like I was definitely the main force that was holding those kids' lives together. So I was able to kind of wing it, that I was like really doing this artwork that wasn't really tangible, but I wasn't selling paintings or anything. So at a certain point, I realized that what I was giving people was financially lucrative as a healer. I mean, I'm not trained in that way, but healing, that word term healer is overused, but as like, some kind of counsel. And that I actually had, I'd worked with, in another time before that, I'd worked with marginalized teenagers as an artist, like working on creative projects. And I definitely had that, really great way with them. I was an astrologer. So I was just like, wow, like people kept writing me, like that one conversation changed my whole life. So it really was economic. And I think I was so sick of the way I was promoting myself in the art world that I felt like got in my way spiritually. And then at the same time, I started my own personal spiritual practice became deeper. And part of that is, my Kundalini practice, although at that time I wasn't really connected to other people, but I had heard about the morning sadhana and I loved that. So like having some kind of thing I cobbled together, and that with the project. And then I also became, just by a series of accidents, synchronicity, became involved in various Indigenous and First Nation cultures. I say that hesitantly because it's like such a sensitive area right now, and I can talk about that if need be. But what happened with those medicines and those cultures are very heart related, and I just naturally just like, it just was like what I was doing became so much more pure through connecting with those cultures, and I really spent a lot of time in traveling and spending time in prayer and, these various really beautiful settings and being accepted with my children. Actually, my daughters traveled with me. So this whole thing happened, which is a story in a book unto itself. So it was just like, I guess the core of the project was bigger than the art. And I don't ever regret it. It's funny. People are always like, you worked so hard on your art career. And it's like, I really rarely think about it. Now that my book is almost done, I'm like, I need to dust off those connections. But people are right there. People still, that's the great thing about social media, like people still see what I'm doing and respect it. And, when I go to New York, people are all excited about what I'm doing. And doesn't matter if it's in the art world or not, you know.
That's great. I think as well, because you're talking about this and it sounds so all encompassing for one person to be giving out so much. And then, of course, at the same time, you were a single parent to three women. How did you find all of that resource to be able to give so much and then equally to raise your daughters?
I think it was an ongoing process. And I think like I have, Chills, I know I've talked to you a little bit about my new project and we're going to talk about that. And I think, you know, this is one of the things I do work with people in my coaching. I think if you are in, you know, either you get there by working on it or you get there by accident, but if you are connected to what I consider like the higher energetic resonance, right, then it becomes less exhausting. I mean, I do think I am naturally, you know, what makes me the love artist is as a personal charisma that has a certain vitality to it. But then, like, how do you separate that out karmically? Like, you know, like, did I magically come with that? Actually, I hope this is not confusing, but in my book, it's not really a straight memoir. And I wrote you that yesterday. And it's funny, it has this like sci-fi element, which I think is really kind of funny and also really moving in that we're all chosen, right, for, you know, where we're going. It's all laid out, you know, like karma. And so in the book, I'm chosen as the love artist, like from the womb. And there's this idea that, you know, like everything, you know, it's like very quantum physics, that everything kind of adds up to this life that we live. And so and even though people are going to, you know, obviously it's fictionalized, people are going to be like, that didn't really happen, but who is to say it didn't really happen? Can't prove it. But I think that when you are in that flow of what you're chosen to be, and it doesn't have to be super fancy and famous. It could be being a mom, you know, it could be being a firefighter. It can be, you know, just like a certain artistic practice. But when you can quiet yourself down enough to feel that presence, then you have more energy. Of course, I still get exhausted. I'm tired right now, but I love what I do so much that it's like I can always, and I have various practices, I can always kind of regroup that energy. And, you know.
And you mentioned your book and you call it a sci-fi fictionalized memoir. Evidence of Absence, a love story. Talk more about the title. Talk more about the whole book in itself.
Well, the title is in flux because I do have another title that's sort of come up, but that's been the title for a long time, and I'm kind of sticking with that right now. But Evidence of Absence, as some of your listeners might know better than I, but it's a line from Carl Sagan about black holes, and you know, that actually, like, we see a star and it's already gone, you know, and that this, like, then there are these black holes that could, like, just kind of, like, suck up, like, almost like another whole universe. And so I just kind of think, I mean, the book is really essentially about love, the need to be special, the need to be seen, you know, it's like various healthy and unhealthy ways. Like it's a memoir, so it's not just about the project. It goes through a certain level of sobriety about love with me, which I did get from the project too. You know, as I said, I started the book thinking I'm like this actress, so you can imagine what my love life was like. And then by the end of the book, I was like hardly seeing anybody. You know, I was so full and I was so private. So, you know, this whole process happened. And, so yes, the Evidence of Absence, though, is like just like talking and spending so much time with people, and how love is really mostly translating the separation from the mother, you know, in childbirth, and that there is this is that God, or, you know, this all encompassing being held, and then you're shot out into the world, and basically you're recovering from that the rest of your life. So yeah, so that's where that connection, I think I got it straight with him. It's a very famous quote. He says, evidence of absence is not the absence of evidence, or it might be the other way. Absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. It works both ways, though, and I think it works about love as well.
And the idea of being chosen, it's how did you come to that?
Well, I mean, one of the things in talking about the like skirting around the indigenous and cultural appropriation issue, I've been thinking a lot about what is my heritage. And I'm totally Italian, like every which way, but like Brooklyn Italian. I mean, the first and second generation on both sides, but, this big Brooklyn family. And so, when I think about how my spirituality growing up was like in church, and I'm old enough, it was like Latin with like, the incense going, and I loved that. And so this idea of, being chosen, is like, I think a very like, it's about the relationship with God. It's about the idea of God seeing you in various translations. And, some people don't feel chosen or don't have that, but I do think that it is actually a very common kind of Western idea. Like sometimes with fame, you have these stories, like somebody's just doing this little thing in like the subway, and then they become a star. And, there's all these different incarnations of that. And this idea of like angels watching over you, or hearing voices in your head, and even things like alien abductions. Like it's like that these external, like spiritual entities come and find you, and you have this special relationship with them. So I think that that's very much how people feel when they're in love, when they feel like they found their soulmate. And then you have many soulmates maybe, or maybe that soulmate feeling only lasts a little while. So that is part of it in connection to love. And I felt that in my true love appointments, that people felt so seen by me. And I have people like literally still writing me from one session. Not that they, fantasize that I'm still like this lover, but that they thank me. There was something really happening there. And so is that, or you can think of like King Arthur and like the Excalibur sword, like, is that real? There's so many examples of that in so many spiritual cultures, this idea of being passed on something. So I play with that. And it's also, I play with the idea of portals, which is a very popular term these days, because that's the idea when it opens to this other world. So that's kind of like, so, my kids are little or younger in the book. And, I do talk about like, you're always talking about portals when you're a kid, like, is, like the mirror of, Alice in Wonderland, or the water, or so, it's just like playing on these magical ideas that help us stay intact and hopeful and spiritually connected, even if it doesn't seem like spirituality.
And I think the just thinking about it, the reason why people would still contact you years later would be, like you say, that point, that moment of being seen, because you can spend a lifetime surrounded by so many people and nobody really see you, or nobody, or you'll be in certain situations where you're not able to fully open up and be yourself. So you're there, but you're not able to be fully there because the greater part of you is not going to get recognized at that point, and that's the part that you're actually the most of. But it's, you've kind of like clamped down on it just to kind of fit in, and then to have someone kind of see the fullness of them for that one moment is going to last a lifetime as well. And you just live in the fact that someone saw you for a moment, or you then chase it again for the rest, or try and find it somewhere else.
I mean, as you can imagine, I heard a number of secrets that people said they never told other people. And like, one of the things I think is really interesting just in the state of masculine and feminine relationships, I became very aware that when people did project the sex worker, or like that I was going to fulfill some kind of fantasy for them, unless I felt really unsafe, like I could kind of feel out that there was something going on there. And because it was so triggering for me, I have a good intuition, obviously. If I did feel safe, I would be like, I need to kind of not just shut this out, because I tend to really spend most of my life surrounded by women, and like I need to keep that open. And because obviously like these men needed healing too, and they needed this dialogue. And most men that came on to me sexually or put out some kind of weird vibe, which it was a small percentage, but it was there. They had like a really shameful secret from their childhood, or they like, there were a couple that were gay who are in marriages who never, like, like came out to me, which I think that's so interesting. They're coming out to me sexually, but this like bravado, but wanting this intimacy. It was just so interesting. So that, was all really interesting for me. And also I did put out I was, kind of funny about it. I was a little bit tongue in cheek. People would sign a waiver before they sat with me. And, it would say, I understand that Kathe is only in love with me for the prescribed time. It would say the time, and that like, he will have another lover after me and many more. And like I could stay in touch with her, but she's not promising. It was all like in the third person, like any like consistent contact or whatever. And and it was like, just kind of made after like some sort of like celebrity kind of interview thing. But I think people actually liked that because I gave them like a lot of safety. Like it was actually not just me kind of protecting myself, but they were like, okay, like it's just this moment. And I think it freed people up a lot.
Why do you think people would feel, I can understand it from that point of view, that because it was part of the art that you were doing, that it needed to have a container, but then people go through their lives wanting it to be a container, and not and not necessarily expanding it past like a moment in time, or not being able to be free and live that kind of expanded, open, exposed in a way.
Well, I think that's like kind of why I'm like doing the work I'm doing now, which is more spiritual coaching and more like really working on different ways that you can hold this higher, like, the her, exactly, the her. I love that acronym. Is it acronym? Yeah. Acronym. So now I feel like my work is to really teach people to hold that higher vibration and to stay more open. I don't really have any like reason why I was doing that work then and this work now. It's just the way things evolved. It was what I could handle at that time. Also, like I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was opening up this huge thing that I actually had no idea. And so I think, couldn't stay open all the time either. Like I was in a very different place in my life, even though it was only like the end of it was only like 6 or 7 years ago. But so much, like if we think about what's gone on the planet since 2012, like I've changed like completely, like probably 5 times since then. So I think that container was like just the structure that it needed to be at that time. And I do think I was much more connected to a more universal kind of audience. And now I work with a more specialized audience, which I think is the best use of my energy, is to just work with people that are ready to receive the teachings that I'm giving. But, sometimes I think about that, and like the book, like me, I think about that with the book. I'm not attached to it being like really like mass circulated, but if it's meant to be and that happens, then that might be a way that I go back into kind of touching more people. I mean, really in the True Love Project, there was all different kinds of people. And I feel like, for better or worse, I mean, I just feel like I'm really focused on such a smaller audience right now with ladies.
But it will run deeper, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah, it will. And then through them. So if somebody, if I'm counseling people to hold a higher vibration, then they're touching their own lives. So exponentially, it's really strong. And I guess I just, because I like in a better, not better, but, I'm like have a deeper faith. So I just believe that I'm doing the right thing for myself. It feels right. I'm just doing it. It's connecting and it has a ripple effect.
And the platform that you're working on now, is it MA platform or MA platform? I don't know.
MA platform.
It's like MA platform. Yeah. Okay. When did that come to be? And
well, that actually came, I've been thinking about it for a while. So, I kind of scooted over a little bit the plant medicines, but I do, again, that's like a bigger conversation, but, they are like psychoactive, very deep spiritual plants in which, teachers and come through. And so in that work, so that's been, like probably the last like 12 years or so that I've been like I'm not actually working with them less, but it kind of built up. And then, so like probably like a couple of years ago was probably like the height of that activity. And I had this connection through that work with the manifestation of the Divine Mother, and I don't say that like I'm like something special. I'm sure many women around the world and men have a connection to the Divine Mother, but it was like a very like direct, like, this is, I understood it by osmosis. This is who is talking to me, and sort of like, like encouraging me to be more specific in representing her, So I wasn't sure what that looked like. And I felt like I already was doing that. But when, so I thought I was doing that, but I had in the back of my mind, I'm getting older and I do all this online work and like, I think to honor that, like I would be in one place and people would come to me and I would create some kind of space that people could come to. But in the guise of the True Love Project, I was like, but it has to be super simple. Like, I don't want to be teaching some big thing. And I just want to like cultivate a space that has her vibration, the Divine Mother, just like, again, like old school Catholic, like some, where miracles take place, that somehow I would have this kind of place. And I wasn't sure what it looked like. And I have to say, because we're connected through the Guru Jagat and her platforms for women, I started working with her in the Graces, which was something I didn't think I could afford. It's like her highest level of counsel. But I had this thing, like I should do it. I should make it work. I got to get that money together. And in the first private session I had with her, she asked me what I wanted to use the year for. And I said, like, I want to create this physical location where people come to me and it like has the vibration of the Divine Mother. It was like so ballsy. And of course, she's such a powerhouse. She was like, okay, so you want to like, transmit the Divine Mother and you want women to come from all over the world and you're going to curate that space. Like, no biggie, we can do this. Let's like work on that. That's your project for the year. And I'm like, okay, great. And then since that moment, like, I just open my mouth about it. And like, people are like, not only supportive, but like big money, like buying real estate kind of supportive. I feel like these people have been, in my life. Hopefully, it will spread out and it'll be more. Right now, it's just an inner circle. But people I've known that have money that have been kind of waiting for me to do something that they could get behind. So yeah, it's just like going really fast. So what it's turned into is, it's got such momentum that I hope that it will be a foundation that will support many projects. But what the core project as the Love Artist, like coming back into the Love Artist, is that there is a shrine, temple, chapel. I feel like I need a new word for it that I haven't figured out, where, and I can feel it and I can see it, that I will. And it won't just be me holding space. There'll be many women and that I will do trainings for, and that there will be a 24/7 prayer in this space, where women can come from all cultures, all races. There will be scholarships for women to travel there. It won't just be for the, the affluent or the close or I'm not sure of location. I'm looking at some different places, but and that they can come to contribute to that vibration. So it's like a heartbeat. It's like a resource. It's like a reservoir of, and I want it to be intersectional, even gender-wise. I'm working that out, obviously through this conversation. I'm like trying to listen to all of the complexity of what it means, to be a human being today, race, gender, national origin, economics. And I'm kind of glad this conversation is happening as I'm starting this, so I can keep this in mind to the best of my ability from the beginning. But there's a vibration that people can bring their cultures to it, but they can also come to it to replenish themselves. So they can go back to their lives and their practices and their families, and that it's just this hookup. And it's kind of magical, but it gets more real every day. And I'm just feel like I'm in love, that's like how into it I'm in. I'm like, and everybody's like, wow, you look so beautiful. And I'm like, it's this project. So it's a lot of work because I'm still coaching and teaching, I'm like doing 2 careers at the same time. But I know that this will carry me and like the natural evolution will happen. But right now, yeah, it's kind of a lot, but it's so exciting. And I'm into it.
to see things manifest in itself as well. And like you say, just with the magic of like your thought and your word, and it's all kind of paving itself for you. We've kind of touched on this before a little bit, and I think we've touched around it before, especially within the spiritual community. There seems, or it's not even that there seems, there is, and we always want to choose our words so carefully about this as well, because it's so fragile.
Mm-hmm.
The healing that needs to be done around this, with women of different cultures, women of different color, white women in positions of, for want of a better word, superiority, it would seem, or having a lead, or a more of a visibility within the spiritual community, and there being still separate camps, and yet wanting to be able to break down those barriers, or wanting to be able to dissolve those barriers. What has happened, or what have you seen happen within the work that you do, and the platforms and the arenas that you're creating that are working with this and working to resolve this?
Well, I mean, it's all really new, for me, because I'll tell you, really, it's only been, to be honest, in the last couple of weeks, although you and I had a conversation about this a couple of months ago, but it really hit home recently because there was an Instagram post that went viral last week that had a white woman playing a drum. I don't know if you saw it, and it said something like, stop stealing indigenous cultures to fill your empty white settler soul. Oof. And that woman is a woman who is a real woman who has like a family. They used her as an example, and she works with various Andean traditions, and they posted like her website and everything. And, she was an example, but, it was like definitely part of this new, all white people are supremacists. And I mean, this would take a whole show to look at. But up until that point, I was like, I grew up in New York City. My high school was like half Black. I've always had Black friends. Like this whole, the whole indigenous connection for me, like I was really welcome there, and my daughters, and it was very respectful. And, so when I saw that, which was literally this past week, I was like, okay, that could be me. Mm-hmm. And even if I have the best of intentions, that could be me. And it's seen, even though I think that there's a certain meanness and hostility that's going on within the feminist, dialogue, I get it. I'm getting it. It hit me. I got it. So it's all really new for me. And I do understand that I can think I have more integrity, but in the face of the world looking in, any way that I am like getting notoriety by using those cultures propagates this split. Mm-hmm. So I can't talk much more than that, because I also, I feel like the message is to just listen, but I just have to say that just hit me. So I'm like really rethinking everything, but what a gift that I start this project with that being very clear, because it's going to be have a nonprofit, at least partial nonprofit base. And, I can have a board, like I can invite in these powerful voices, mm-hmm. which I would want anyway, but it's like, wow, I really, really got the message. And I and like how I work this out, I think I'm entitled as an artist and, a mother and a grandmother who has worked in all of these dimensions for a long time to create a project of my own, my own intuition and inspiration. But if I am to represent something called the Ma, that is part of every culture, and that's part of my homework to and it's only going to make it better. I'm actually excited about that. So I'm like, wow, just got in under the wire, because I have friends that are doing amazing things, and they've already created these big, spiritual, enterprises, or for lack of a better word, large, organizations and centers. And they're white, and they created it from the best place in their heart. And now with everything that's coming out, there's a lot of stuff that's built on that has to, be looked at. And they're already really working so hard. And I feel for them. I understand, you're working so hard, just keep things running, keep your dialogue in your inner circle working and meeting everybody's needs. And you have to rethink the whole premise. So I'm like, okay, so much, and I just am like really thinking about that right now, who I want to have in my council, and it's just like perfect timing because I'm just starting the nonprofit, and so I can have a board that's like really kicks my butt and also is connected to people in their community, so like they can, like that it becomes really like this, like a good kind of matrix, like a good kind of spider web. And so anyway, that's in my prayers a lot. And because I think if it really represents the vibration that I know is the center, it has to represent all women. And I'm just going to say, this might be controversial, but I have to say, like, I'm trying to figure out what all women means, because I am queer and I'm in the queer world. And, I'm like totally feminine, a feminine body, mom, grandmother. So, I've got like the classic package, but I think that for the vibration I'm thinking of is that women that like their area or persons that their area of kind of like, sexual pleasure is the clitoris, because I feel like the clitoris, and that's like a much longer conversation, but I feel like that vibration of the clitoris is really the connection to the divine mother. So, that's still going to exclude some people, like some trans, like male to female, but there can be other places, but the vibration I feel like is connected to that. So I say that at risk of not being politically correct, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about, at least right now.
Sure. Thank you. Because it's one of the.
It wasn't too long of an
answer. No, it wasn't, because I can see all sides. It's one of those things that it's been not unspoken. It's been unspoken for so long that when it starts to get exposed, there's going to be a lot of anger. There's going to be a lot of rushing out the gate. There's going to be a lot of misunderstanding from both sides, anger and denial on both sides. People are going to be angry, people are going to deny. I think also, I don't know if you ever tune into Jada Pinkett Smith and her Red Table.
Oh no, I haven't. Yeah, I've heard about her. I've seen snippets.
Because this week her talk was interesting in that she had Jane Elliott on, who was the woman who had done the experiment where she had a classroom of children, all her children were white, but she was kind of going, you've got blue eyes, you've got brown eyes, and then she put them basically going, the children that have got brown eyes, and was really, and in the end she saw children who were loving become really hateful from each other because she set the prejudice up between them. Wow. And she came to the table and she was having this conversation with Jada, her mom and her daughter. And you could also see it generationally where the prejudice had come from and why women of a certain generation within the Black community still held on to prejudices against white women, because it was so ingrained on experiences that they'd had from very young that they'd not been then able to talk out and unpack and be honest about. And she was saying basically we're all one race, we're all the human race, and it all comes from this. It was a good conversation. It was way too short because it was like 25 minutes and only really just started to get to the point of it. But I think having someone of her stature in terms of celebrity and eyes on her now talking about this will start to bring it out into the open, and it might move a little bit quicker than at the moment I see it happening on kind of Instagram level. And it can be it can do some good, but I've seen sometimes it can get really dark. So
well, one more thing I have to say about that, because I know you have some other questions, but is that it is, so we're like, operating, it's obvious, like the women, like it's just happening, it's been the prophecy, but like with everything from like Me Too to this current, like between feminists or like, I can't even deal with the word feminist anymore. Like we need another word, but anyway, but what's happening, like when you talk about Instagram, is between like basically women of color and white feminists and people in like healing, and like, it's like gotten like really specific. And I just feel like, so it's like, women are coming into power, and the voices are being on what happened in the US elections, just like, like last week. And so I think, so it's been like, it was the Dalai Lama, I think, that said like the white woman has to lead the way because she has the privilege and the agency. And I think that is true, like that there is a little bit more freedom there. Not that they're doing all the work or that they're the leaders, but they have maybe more money or more agency. And then I think what's coming out in this new level of conversation is how do they use that? Not to necessarily be leaders themselves. Saying like, I want to start this project, but like I said, I don't want to be the guru there. I want to be like, create this space that has all these voices. Mm-hmm. But I think what is coming out in this new level of conversation is like, how do you use that to bring the table to all the women? Mm-hmm. So it's still the same thing, but it's like the specifics of what the work is and how you use your power and how you use your privilege. Not like, I mean, one can only hope we dismantle all of the privilege, but in the meantime, you know, how you use that. And so it's gotten so specific to people that will pay attention and listen mm-hmm. and maybe do something, as mm-hmm. opposed to just complaining about everything from the patriarchy to white supremacy in general. It's gotten very specific. It's making people really uncomfortable, myself included, but it's actually like really putting the change in the hands of people that actually can make change. Mm. So I think it's like very uncomfortable right now, but I think a lot of people, just in the past week, I've been in so many interesting conversations with women from like, you know, like 15 through like 80, you know, like people are talking and listening and thinking, and it's kind of messy right now, but I have hope that it's, you know.
I think what I get from it is the call is, and this has been very general, but it feels like the call from women of colour is for them to feel that the white women who have had lives built on privilege to recognise the privilege that they have. And then it goes from that, because then some will be like, well, you know, I love everyone. I've got black friends and all this kind of thing. It's you
so
can't
it's really
you can't
call that argument out. Yeah.
It's just like, that's not good enough. It's like, yeah, exactly. Just we don't let people get angry. It's just like, kind of look at what you've benefited from, because I think the best analogy I've heard is, as a black woman, you're like a left-handed person trying to navigate a right-handed world. And then you just get used to everything is just slightly difficult for you, and you just kind of build up an extra response on it. But if everything was set up in a way that it just made you roll forward easier, mm-hmm. and then also the people who've had it easier can then at least acknowledge that they have had it easier, and then work on the healing between each other. I think that's one of the main issue initially.
I think so. And on that note, you know, the other thing that has really woken me up was just that level of argument of like, well, like if you hold all men accountable for rape culture and for, you know, for like just like a certain level of cluelessness, then how could you not hold yourself as a white woman responsible for a certain level of white cluelessness? And it is true. I mean, I have had times where I've, as a practice, just tried to like walk down the street in New York City where you see a million people and not be like, yeah, don't talk to me. Yeah, you're an idiot. Yeah, like, I mean, like, I'm serious. Like, I mean, like, just be nice. They have hard lives. Like, just be, but like, I'm just like, you know, screw you, screw you, screw you. You know, just as like a history of living in New York City and protecting myself in that way. So I'm like, oh, that like really hit home. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, because there are, of course, many men there. They're just doing the best they can, but yet they have that privilege. They're walking on the street in a certain way, and I have this vulnerability, you know, physically, like many times. So anyway, that argument, like, I got that one too. So, you know, it's smart. What's happening is really smart. It's very clear. And I think people are really getting it. And like I said, everybody's super uncomfortable, but I've been taught by all my spiritual teachers, that's the best place to be.
Yeah, apparently it is. We're here. But yeah, it's always like labor is painful, birthing is painful, that, you know, that so we live on that. I wanted to ask also about your Elixir and your LoveElixir and your creation there.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's like one of those things that I just kind of like was making in my spare time, and it's really doing so well. Yeah, there is an herb school called the Gaia Herb School. That's like, there's a few different teachers there, and but they teach this really beautiful herbal practice that reminds me of my relationship with plants, that, you speak to the soul of the plants. And anyway, they have, it's not like they hold their recipes as like that they made them. I mean, they just pass through them. And a friend of mine who was a student of theirs was like, you should be making this LoveElixir. It's so powerful. Like, the right people for it. And so she taught me, like, she had the freedom from her teachers to give it to whoever. And I just made the first bottle, and it was just like, I had that moment, like in the True Love Project, like, wow, like I'm really in the right place. I'm really speaking in, and it has to sit for 4 weeks. And I have a great, really beautiful morning practice, and I was like praying with it. And from the first, so it was like it was around that big eclipse that passed over the United States. So a year from last August was when I made it the first time. And from I just made like a little mason jar, and I had like 20 bottles, and they just went, and people wanted more. It just has just grown and grown. And I think it's my prayer. And I think the Ma platform is definitely in there, even though I wasn't working on that directly at the time, but it's the main active ingredient is Damiana, and it's an estrogen neutralizer. So aside from like really like more sexual sensual issues, it's like a hormone balancer, and it's a mood stabilizer, and it's actually a mood brightener. It's an antidepressant, natural. So it has all these things, but it's a libido enhancer, and it's one of the few like real powerful libido enhancers that work on women, because most libido enhancers, traditionally just increase the blood flow to the genitals, but we all know that doesn't really work for women. I mean, it might work a little bit, but this is like, so the way I see it is, my language is like this Shakti, like sexual, creative, like that connection to the Divine Mother, that everything came out of that kind of vibration, like the natural world, that gorgeousness at the heart of the natural world. And Audre Lorde, in her Erotic as Power, said very eloquently, I mean, I can't quote directly, but she's like, basically, women are just taught to compartmentalize their erotic natures because of safety issues, or because it's, it's hysterical, or because it's threatening, or because, so we're just like so busy kind of like navigating that energy inside of us in ways that we keep it so precious. And really, that's the energy that's going to change the world. That's the energy that's going to really make us a powerful force through all these things we're talking about. So, that's my prayer. And I feel like, I get these testimonies. I'm like literally like I'm 60. I think I look pretty vibrant, and I'm like literally taking a slug out of a mason jar every morning. So I tell everybody drop her full, but so it works. But also I get like the craziest testimonials. Like somebody just wrote me the other day, like I went back to my ancestral home. She lives in the South in the US. And like, I was like dancing naked in the rain around the house and like healing all these wounds. And I'm like, wow, that's the best testimonial ever. And she's been regularly taking the elixir for almost a year. So I think it's doing magical things. And, maybe it's the power of suggestion, maybe it's the plants, maybe it's my prayer, but it's going pretty well. So I'm excited about it.
And where is it? I don't know if you said, where is it indigenous to the plant?
Damiana is this, where I get the Damiana that I get is from Mexico, but you can grow it. Like, I mean, I think it just grows in abundance there. That seems to be, but I think you could grow it in the United States. I mean, people grow it in their gardens. It's not like something that is, it grows like a big bushy plant, and it's not something that's like, like a plant that's like a vine that only grows like in a certain sacred place. So I'm not really sure why most of it comes from Mexico. I suppose I could look into that, but I do know people that grow it in their gardens in the US.
I'd never heard of it. That's why I was kind of looking. I didn't recognize the name.
Famous as this sexy plant for a long time. And when my kids were little, I was in Sardinia, and I think it's an Italian liqueur, and it comes in this bottle. I have to put a picture on my website. That's like, that famous Venus, like the really full bodied with the big breasts, like sitting there. It's like that shape, and it's like this bright yellow. And I had a bottle that I never opened, that I just carried as like on my altar for years, and I gave it to somebody. But someone was saying like it was like a famous liqueur in in Southern Europe. So it's been around and used in various ways, but it's supposedly like it was like aphrodisiacs.
I learned something new. It's perfect.
Yeah, you check it out.
And you're going to be doing a call for the Aquarian Women's Leadership Society.
Yeah, I am. I'm so happy.
Well. So what is that going to be? I know most of the people listening to this won't be part of that, but
yeah, well, no, but I do like I'm going to tell them how to contact me because I actually did teach an open class. It's very similar during the Venus retrograde. We're going to be using a couple of Kundalini meditations that actually work with, they're specifically for women, although I think men can use them and work on second chakra. They do really work on the clitoral energy of like, and being able to like, kind of like build that energy and hold it. And so I'm going to work with that with the group and then I'm going to actually read from the Audre Lorde essay because it's so good and so powerful. And then just, talk a little bit about my experience. And then I want to open the floor to like having people ask me questions, because I think that it's really important with these kinds of issues, especially, Guru Jagat's circles. I feel like she's done such an excellent job of really empowering women. And this is like a place that's still like a little bit secret. So I want to really be available for people to share and go a little bit deeper. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. It's going to be great. So let me ask you some of her conversations questions now as well. So firstly, what is the best piece of advice a woman's ever given to you?
Well, interestingly enough, it's something that Guru Jagat actually said to a group recently, but it's been, I've been told this from everyone from my grandmother to a few other kind of older, crankier, tougher women in my life is like, handle it. In some form. And the way I take that, like, it's like also in like some of these like indigenous cultures that I've been part of, like part of it is the stoicism that is not part of my upbringing in the United States of like you just like quiet, like just like committing to something difficult and like really rising above and like connecting in a spiritual way. So, I wrote down, I said about the rigors of my assignment, like to handle it. Like if I want to go big, or I feel like to go big is to like, to find practices that enable me to like hold that and not get caught up in how uncomfortable I am, basically. So it's like, but basically the advice is handle it. And that's like really, Guru Jagat said that and it sounded just like my grandmother. And I was like, really, it's just, and my grandmother was really strong. And she was, just like a bookkeeper and a seamstress. And she wasn't, she didn't have a mission to take over the world, but she, was a widow really young. And she was the matriarch of a long, like many generation, like big family. And she like stuck with it. I was very close to her till she died, and thinking of her.
Great. I've got an aunt who's very much like that as well, actually. She's kind of the centerpin of the family, but she's a tough woman, and she says it in many different ways, but she says it in a she has a similar intent. And what woman would you say represents higher energetic resonance?
Well, I really thought about that, and I didn't have, we spoke to a lot about Guru Jagat, and I have to say I'm so grateful to her in this prayer I have right now, and that it's like, I am often the strongest woman around in my situation. It's just the way it's been. And I tend to work with younger women. I have 3 daughters, but my kids are like, she has 3,000 daughters, like young women are attracted to me. So I do love that she's so powerful and that I have her counsel. And I do think she really holds a high vibration, and she works really hard to do that. And her life could be exhausting, but she always seems like totally like full of energy. So she inspires me. But, when I was thinking about that, I thought of like, everything from I have a granddaughter who's 2, who's just like so inspired, and like just looking at that and thinking we all started there. Like she just thinks she can do everything, and she just like communicate. She's so pleased that she can communicate. She's just learning to speak, and I get very inspired by her. And, but, and it's like for me every time, like so many women are vulnerable with me. And when I feel that moment of like trust and willingness, that's like very inspirational to inspirational. So, it's kind of like the everyday woman in a way inspires me when they can, like just take a moment to find that truth.
Gosh. And it's an honor that they trust you as well. So it's definitely,
totally.
You have that.
Very appreciative about that.
And talk about your favorite self-care rituals and practices. You touched on it a little earlier.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I've talked a lot about Kundalini, and right now I do talk about it a lot because it is the practice that is supporting me to take this like big project on, and I've really upped my commitment to that work. And so part of that is the Amrit before dawn prayer, and I'll tell you that is probably the biggest thing I can do for myself, and I try to hold that sacred. But in that, I take my time, I get some water. I usually like kind of deal with like some little like special personal hygiene things that I always think I don't have time for. If I do it before my sadhana, which might seem crazy at like 3 a.m., but it's like, it kind of sets the stage. And I just moved, and before I moved, I lived in a place that had a fireplace, and, weather permitting, I would make a fire too. So like all these things so early in the morning, but that just like my day would just go so great and really, it just met so many parts of me. So it's just like taking that time, feeling like I have enough time and getting up early and practicing.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so what is next for you? We've talked on so many things. What is the big project that's next?
Well, the big project is to finish my book, which I really want to finish by next summer. I've been working on it for a long time, and it's like in a kind of complicated final edit because shifting some things. So I'd love to be done with that by the summer. And I'm continuing. I'm a coach, and people can connect with me. I work with people on a lot of different levels, mostly about love and purpose. Those seem to be the two big ones. But really like developing the mom platform. I would like to, on the solstice, which is only 6 weeks away, I would like to start a continuous prayer at that time that would be women in their own homes, but all over the world. And I figured out that it would take 60 women, 3 hours each to cover every hour in the week. And I feel like 3 hours is long enough. It's like a little bit hard, and like there'll be a format, but there'll be something in the middle where people can do it their own way. And so I'm working on that right now. I probably have, without even trying, like 30 women or so, or more. And but I really want to kind of flesh out through connections, like a more diverse, as far as like, I would like to, I have some people in China that I know. I have somebody in Africa, but, it's like, it's a little bit spotty, it's mostly the US and Europe. And so I'm working on that. So I really want that to happen. So it would be just like women praying. There's not going to be like a Zoom call, or you can't tune in. You just know that the women are praying. And so I feel like if I can get that going, then it will really make the project go. So that's what I'm working on.
Great stuff. And so where can everybody find you? What are your Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and website?
I'm not on Twitter. I mean, I am on Twitter as the Love Artist, but I never go there. That's kind of fallen to the wayside, but I get messages. But Instagram is my biggest social media platform. And so it's the Love Artist on Instagram, and that's a great way. I do answer, DMs there, and that's kind of where I spend my most time projecting. And KatheIzzo.com is my website, and you can order the Elixir there. Also through KatheIzzo.com. So it's KatheIzzo, and I'm sure it will be on your website. You can order the Elixir, you can get one-on-one sessions. You can see I have the front page is like just ongoing. It's kind of like a blog. It's like my newsletters. I'm talking about astrology and stuff. So you can really see like how I work. And that's probably a great way. There's a contact page there, and people can reach me that way.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kathe, for coming on.
What a great conversation.
It's been so much fun, and it's been just great to like find out about you, because there are so many women that I know little bits about, and then I get to kind of sit down and have this concentrated amount of time and really understand where they're from, their inspiration, their story, and it just, connects me to you even more. So I'm grateful that.
Well, it was Sasha from Immense Grace that I happened to share an Airbnb with. That was like, she's like, Carol, she should interview you. Like, you got to kiss. So that's right after I saw her. That was when I reached out to you. So I have to thank her also for giving
Sure, no problem. Great, thank you so much. Thanks to Kathe for joining me on this episode of Her Conversations, and thank you for listening. You can discover more about me and the Her Project by visiting my website, carolmaywhittick.com. And if you sign up for my weekly newsletter, you'll receive information about any offerings from previous guests of Her Conversations and specially curated content from me. On social media, you can find me on Facebook under Carol May Whittick, and my Instagram and Twitter handle is Kazmick, Kazmick. And I'd also appreciate you leaving a comment, liking and sharing any episodes. And if you subscribe, you'll be notified as soon as a new episode is published. So thank you again for listening, and until the next episode, take care and bye.